Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise, stack up the source material you shared with us, and get straight to the knowledge you need. Today, we are immersing ourselves in, well, it's the single biggest tectonic shift happening right now in the world of communications. We're talking about the radical, total remodeling of the marketing and advertising agency landscape by artificial intelligence. And look, this isn't just about adopting a new piece of software. It's about a foundational, deep restructuring of how the entire industry operates from top to bottom.
That's absolutely right. It's a huge topic. We're diving into a really fascinating analysis here, and we're drawing heavily from recent industry reports and even some internal findings shared by global giants. For the last few years, the whole conversation has been, should agencies use AI?
Right. Is this a thing?
Exactly. That's old news. The central theme of this deep dive is to analyze AI's current status. And our sources, they confirm a definitive transition. AI has moved from being, an experimental project, something agencies played with on the side, to becoming an integral, foundational, and frankly, indispensable element of their entire operational spine.
And that transformation, that really dictates our mission for you, the learner, today. It's no longer sufficient to just know if agencies are using AI. We need to go much deeper. We have to understand how deeply it's embedded into the actual operational workflow, the mechanics of making and delivering things. And critically, we need to dissect the significant organizational and cultural changes that are absolutely required if an agency wants to capitalize on this power fully and profitably.
I think a good analogy is it's the difference between buying a small experimental component for your car and then deciding to replace the entire engine block, the transmission, and the chassis with custom-built parts.
You have to rebuild the whole car.
You have to rebuild the entire vehicle to handle the new speeds AI enables. And that idea, that analogy of rebuilding the core structure, that's really key to understanding this transformation.
Okay, so let's unpack this initial shift in status. The language used in our sources to describe this change is really striking. They state AI is no longer a mere side project in marketing, which kind of acknowledges that previous era of isolated experiments. But now they describe it using these incredibly powerful metaphors. They're calling it the tide that lifts all boats and declaring it an integral part of the workflow. That sounds less like a choice and more like, a law of nature being imposed on the industry.
It speaks to maturity and dependency in equal measure. I mean, when we discuss AI as a mere side project, we are reflecting on the recent past. An agency might have allocated a small, specialized generative AI team. Maybe they were using content generation tools primarily for social media captions or running some predictive analytics on a very limited scope of media spend.
Right. They were isolated proof-of-concept experiments.
Exactly. They were compartmentalized. They were non-critical.
Experiments that, if they failed, wouldn't sink the main agency ship.
Precisely. But labeling it the tide that lifts all boats, that fundamentally shifts the perspective. That metaphor implies two things: ubiquity and dependency.
Okay, break that down. Ubiquity and dependency.
Well, if AI is the tide, then every single function within the agency, from account management to strategic planning, media buying, creative execution, every single boat is now reliant on that rising water level.
So you can't just opt out.
You can't. And that means the conversation has moved entirely past novelty and straight into business necessity. Agencies that haven't managed to integrate AI at this fundamental level, they're not just behind the curve. They're trying to sail in shallow waters while their competition is operating in the deep ocean. So the implication is that the cost of not adopting this integral technology now far outweighs the cost of adoption. It's more expensive to be left behind. And what's fascinating here is the specific source context that validates all of this. We're not hearing this from, optimistic venture capital firms or some tiny startup making bold claims. These insights are based on findings from major industry players. Specifically, the analysis cites WPP, one of the largest advertising holding companies globally, the established industrial complex, and Stability AI, a clear leader in large-scale generative models.
And that confirmation at the highest level is absolutely crucial for the listener to understand. WPP, which manages hundreds of billions in ad spend and thousands of clients, is Well, it's fundamentally conservative when it comes to massive infrastructural change. They don't jump on every trend.
No, they wait until it's proven.
Exactly. So when WPP starts describing AI as integral, it signifies that the technology is mature enough, it's reliable enough, and most importantly, it's financially compelling enough to warrant a complete overhaul of its infrastructure. It's the moment the technology proved its ROI.
That's it. It validates that the shift is happening at the industry's highest, most scaled levels. This means the conversation is no longer about if generative AI can produce, adequate assets.
That question is settled.
It's settled. The question is now how to manage its output at a global multi-client scale. It has officially transitioned from a proof of concept to the operating standard for modern advertising. It's now a fixed cost of doing business, embedded deep in the organizational DNA.
So we've established it's integral and it's foundational. Now we have to get into the how. If it truly is integral, where exactly is it showing up in the day-to-day grind? We need to look at the operational mechanics of this workflow revolution. The analysis clearly states AI's deployment is comprehensive. It is embedded at every stage of daily operations. Let's really hammer home that phrase. Every stage. This suggests the machine doesn't just show up to the end for media optimization, which is kind of where we all assumed AI started. It's there at the very first moment of strategic thought.
That end-to-end integration is the most significant discovery here. We are moving away from augmented tasks and toward fully automated workflows. So let's start at the beginning. The absolute strategic foundation of any campaign, creative briefs.
The creative brief. I mean, that is traditionally the most human-centric part of the whole process.
Yeah.
Of course, human insight, cultural understanding, competitive analysis.
Yeah.
So help us understand how AI assists here beyond just, summarizing market trends.
AI is assisting by fundamentally redefining the scale and the speed of strategic analysis. Think of the pre-AI process for a minute. You have human strategists. They analyze a limited set of proprietary data, competitor reports, and maybe a few focus groups. They are limited by the sample size they can humanly process and, well, the time they have available.
They're hypothesis generators, essentially.
Yeah.
They're making an educated guess.
Precisely. An educated guess. Now, AI takes on the role of a predictive and comprehensive analyst. It can define the audience by analyzing massive, sometimes overwhelming, data sets. And we're not talking about reviewing 1,000 lines of CRM data here. We are talking about using things like cluster analysis and latent variable modeling to segment millions of consumers based on behaviors and sentiment that a human might never, ever spot.
Okay, can you give us a more technical example? How does it actually move from just data to a real strategy recommendation?
Certainly. So an AI might use natural language processing, or NLP, to analyze the textual and the tonal success metrics of every single campaign the agency has ever run. We could be talking millions of data points over a decade.
Wow.
It can then cross-reference those tonal successes with real-time social media sentiment related to the client's category. So let's say the strategy team needs a concept for a new energy drink. The AI might identify, for instance, that aspirational high-energy campaigns consistently fail with Gen Z on TikTok, but it also sees that they are instead responding to ironic, low-effort, self-deprecating tones in that specific category right now.
So instead of a human strategist spending weeks researching and then guessing which tone is going to resonate, the AI is recommending statistically proven concepts or themes instantly. The human job then shifts from hypothesis generation to curating the best data-backed strategic foundation possible.
Exactly. The human creative can skip that entire preliminary research phase and move immediately into nuanced refinement and cultural specificity. They're applying human judgment to the AI's data-driven foundation, making the entire strategy phase exponentially faster and, frankly, more grounded in hard evidence.
Okay, that covers the strategy. That's a huge shift already. The next stage, production pipelines. This is where the rubber meets the road. What does accelerating production pipelines really entail in a high-volume agency setting beyond just, generating a few images?
Oh, it's far beyond simple asset generation. It's about industrial-scale iteration and hyper-personalization. The production pipeline is where that strategic concept has to be materialized and then tailored for dozens, often hundreds, of deployment channels. Imagine a major global campaign. It requires assets optimized for 15 different platforms, Instagram stories, a standard Facebook feed, high-resolution CTV ads, banner ads, a half-dozen TikTok aspect ratios, email headers. The list goes on.
And that used to be the definition of grunt work for a human production artist. Days, even weeks, of just tedious manual resizing and minor adjustments. I've been there.
And this is exactly where AI eliminates that human scale constraint. AI handles this instantaneously using tools that automate variance generation. So not only does it perform the tedious resizing and formatting, but it can also generate thousands of subtle variations of the initial concept, different colors, different background images, minor copy variations to fit character limits, and all of it is validated against the brand guidelines automatically.
So the output volume becomes just unimaginable. Agencies can deploy 5 or 10 times the necessary assets just for testing and deployment, achieving a new level of scale without having to hire a massive production farm.
Absolutely. The human designer shifts from being an executor to being a validator, a creative director overseeing a fleet of AI workers. This acceleration ensures that the speed you gained in the brief stage isn't immediately lost in the production stage.
Okay, let's just pause and unpack this level of embedding for a second. We're moving from the initial data-driven strategy of the brief through the scalable, rapid execution of the production pipeline. This suggests a fundamental overhaul of traditional marketing roles. You're not just hiring a production manager anymore, you're hiring someone to manage the output of an AI production machine.
And that leads us directly to the subsequent critical steps where AI is integrated, focusing heavily on control, compliance, and eliminating organizational friction.
All right, let's talk about approvals. I imagine this is where speed hits bureaucratic reality. In any large agency, approvals from legal, brand standards, and account management can often be the single biggest bottleneck in the whole process. How exactly does AI streamline the sign-off process across these complex requirements?
This is a classic example of automation reducing high-stakes friction. In the traditional workflow, an asset is created, and then it is passed to a human compliance team. That human team must manually check dozens of complex rule sets, legal claims, brand standard adherence, and sometimes very strict regional regulations like GDPR or COPPA.
And if they miss one detail, the agency or the client could be facing millions in fines. The stakes are high.
Precisely. The process is slow, and it's high risk. But now, the moment an asset is created, the AI can perform instantaneous, preemptive compliance checks. We're talking about systems using computer vision to verify that the logo placement, the color palette, and the mandatory legal disclaimers adhere strictly to brand safety standards. At the same time, NLP models are scanning the copy for problematic language, unauthorized claims, or compliance violations related to specific regulations, like financial disclosure requirements.
So the AI acts as a sophisticated, always-on quality control and legal gatekeepers. It's flagging risks before the asset is even delivered to the human legal department.
It drastically reduces the human legal team's workload. It lets them focus only on the complex, novel, or ambiguous cases. It means that when the creative finally lands on the desk of a human account manager or the legal team for sign-off, 95% of the routine, time-consuming compliance checks are already completed and verified. This facilitates faster legal review prep, and it eliminates those agonizing internal bottlenecks that used to stall campaigns for days, sometimes weeks. This isn't just faster, it's inherently safer because the machine is more diligent and faster than any team of humans just checking off checklists.
I see the immediate benefit there, but let me push back on this a little bit. Doesn't that risk over-reliance on the machine for something as high stakes as legal compliance? I mean, if the AI system is trained on previous acceptable outputs, might it be blind to emerging regulatory shifts or ethical gray areas that require human interpretation?
That's a crucial point, and it's exactly why the human role shifts to strategic oversight, not elimination. The AI is best at pattern recognition, identifying known risks, and verifying adherence to established rule sets. The human legal team must still validate the system's ongoing accuracy, and, more importantly, they have to update the AI's rule sets immediately when a new regulation is passed, or when a court ruling changes precedent.
So the human is the strategic commander, and the AI is the automated verification army.
Perfect analogy. You cannot eliminate the commander, but you can certainly increase the size and speed of their force.
That makes perfect sense. Automation as a quality control gatekeeper, but still requiring human strategic input to manage the guardrails. Okay, finally, the lifeblood of marketing, media optimization. This has been an area where AI has played a role for a while, but how is it so profoundly integral now that it merits discussion alongside creative briefs?
Media optimization is where the ultimate ROI is determined, and AI is integral now because it operates at a scale and speed that redefines what effective investment even means. AI's role here is maximizing campaign performance post-launch by performing what humans physically cannot do. Real-time budget allocation across dozens of platforms based on microseconds of performance data.
Right. A human media buyer sets a budget, maybe they review performance every few hours, or perhaps they adjust bids manually at the start of the day. They operate on a human timescale.
The AI operates on a machine timescale. It's analyzing millions of impressions per hour and making micro adjustments every single minute. It's using sophisticated predictive modeling and deep learning algorithms to instantaneously analyze which demographic on which specific platform, using which specific creative variant, is converting at the highest cost efficiency ratio. And it shifts budget away from underperforming segments instantly, often before a human even finishes pulling the first performance report.
So we're talking about A/B testing taken to the absolute extreme ABC, all the way to Z testing at scale.
Exactly. This allows for A/B testing across thousands of variations simultaneously. And critically, this ensures maximum return on investment by eliminating the lag time between performance measurement and resource reallocation. Human-led optimization is periodic, AI-led optimization is continuous and self-correcting. This is why it's integral. It maximizes the efficiency of the capital that the agency manages on behalf of the client, ensuring the creative work lands exactly where it has the highest statistical probability of success. So this end-to-end integration from inception with the data-driven briefs to execution in production and media optimization to control with automated compliance approvals, this is what allows agencies to gain this unprecedented speed and streamlined process. It's less about augmenting one part of the job and more about automating the entire circulatory system of the agency.
That holistic view is essential because, as you just pointed out, if you automate the creative process but the approval stage remains slow, you gain nothing. The transformation only works if the entire organizational system is streamlined by this underlying AI spine. Let's connect this deeply integrated workflow back to the bottom line, which is, always the ultimate driving force behind such massive technological investment. The primary result identified in the sources is enabling agencies to serve more clients efficiently. This is the economic payoff that agency leadership is demanding.
That is the core business outcome. It's all about increased capacity without proportional increases in headcount. Historically, agency capacity was rigidly constrained by human hours. The amount of time it took for a team to manually research, design, produce, manage, and optimize a campaign.
It was a direct ratio: more work, more people.
Right. AI fundamentally redefines that capacity equation by creating a massive multiplier effect on human effort.
And you analyzed that this capacity increase is driven by two key factors: faster workflows and streamlined processes. Let's separate those two drivers for a moment and focus on the economic implications.
Okay, so faster workflows directly address the time saved the campaign cycle time. By automating vast portions of production and speeding up approvals, the process that historically took, say, 6 weeks might now take 2 or 3. The economic implication is that the agency can now complete twice as many projects per year with the same staff, or, more likely, they can onboard a new client far sooner. This is a direct multiplier on service capacity and therefore revenue potential.
And what about streamlined processes? How does that differ from just being faster in financial terms?
Streamlining is about reducing friction, and friction always equals expense. Think about the costs associated with manual handoffs. In the past, data, files, and briefs moved between 5 or 6 different teams, often requiring manual extraction from one system, reformatting in the middle, and then manual re-entry into a production system. Each one of those handoffs is a point of potential human error, requiring subsequent rework, correction, and wasted time.
So streamlining removes rework costs, which hit the margin directly.
Exactly. When AI is integrated end-to-end, the data flows seamlessly through a single automated spine. This removal of manual handoffs, data reformatting, and complex data management reduces internal friction, it minimizes rework expenses, and it frees up human capacity to focus exclusively on high-value activities, client-facing strategy, high-level creative direction, prompt engineering. The agency's effective margin on each project increases dramatically.
This shift has profound implications for the agency business model itself. It sounds like we are moving away from agencies selling hours of human effort, the traditional time and materials or retainer model, and moving rapidly toward agencies selling speed, guaranteed performance, and streamlined efficiency.
You've hit on the critical strategic shift, which we can call value compression.
Mm-hmm.
When AI handles the execution hours, the value of those hours approaches zero. This forces agencies to abandon bloated retainer models based on headcount and shift to performance-based billing structures. They are no longer selling time, they are selling results delivered at superhuman speed.
Right.
If an agency can use AI to increase a client's ROI by 30% in 1 month, the client is willing to pay a premium based on that performance, not on how many copywriters were involved. This represents a complete restructuring of the financial relationship between client and agency.
And this shift is only possible because of AI's unique strengths capabilities that humans simply cannot match, making the machine a necessary partner.
Let's detail why AI is a necessary partner by focusing on those specific capabilities. First, the handling of repetitive tasks, or what we affectionately call the grunt work that drains human creative energy and capacity. What specific tasks are being dissolved by AI now? We've touched on resizing assets, but think about the sheer administrative load. Consider localizing copy for 50 different regional markets, where each market has slightly different linguistic nuances or cultural sensitivities. AI can draft the initial culturally appropriate variations far faster than any human translation and localization team. Or take simple data categorization, tagging thousands of user comments from a campaign to gauge sentiment, organizing campaign files into standardized formats, or drafting routine reporting templates that just require pulling standardized metrics every week.
The tasks that are essential for the workflow but make highly paid creative professionals feel undervalued and, well, exhausted.
Precisely. By offloading this rote, repetitive execution, the human creative energy is conserved for the strategic, high-level, truly innovative challenges. The 5% of the job that actually requires unique human insight and judgment. The economic gain here isn't just speed, it's a massive improvement in the quality of output, because the agency is paying premium human talent to focus on premium strategic problems, not manual data entry.
And the second, and perhaps most impressive strength, is data analysis speed. You mentioned this being crucial for media optimization, but let's elaborate on the sheer scale and complexity of data AI is managing compared to what a human can do.
What's fascinating here is the sheer velocity of modern marketing data. Modern media buying involved processing massive, multi-dimensional data sets instantaneously. We aren't talking about reviewing a spreadsheet with 100 rows. We are talking about ingesting and analyzing performance across literally millions of ad impressions, tracked across hundreds of dynamic variables simultaneously.
What kind of variables?
These variables include time of day, geolocation, device type, the specific creative variant being shown, the current bid price, and even the estimated consumer lifetime value.
That is a task where the human processing capacity just hits a hard, unyielding wall. We cannot process data in parallel like that.
It's beyond human cognitive load. A human team might spend an hour compiling, reviewing, and interpreting this data to make a single decision about budget allocation. In that 1 hour, hundreds of thousands of dollars might have been spent suboptimally.
Whereas the AI,
And AI uses its parallel processing power to analyze that data stream, identify the best path, the best bid, the best allocation, and execute the changes almost instantaneously. That ability to instantly process and act upon massive data sets is absolutely crucial for effective media buying and optimization, ensuring every dollar spent works as hard as possible. The machine moves optimization from a periodic adjustment to a continuous, self-correcting, and hyper-efficient state.
so the economic case is crystal clear. Greater efficiency, higher quality output because human focus is restored, and the ability to pivot the business model toward high-margin, performance-based results rather than just selling headcount. So we've established the unprecedented power of the integrated AI workflow and the massive economic payoff. But you cannot simply bolt this sophisticated technology stack onto a 1990s rigidly siloed organizational chart. That brings us to the inevitable challenge. Transformation. Agencies need to rethink everything about their internal operations.
Technological adoption is truly only half the battle. The sources are emphatic that agencies must rethink internal structures. This is the organizational imperative, and it is usually the more painful and complex part of the process. If AI is handling the end-to-end workflow from the data synthesis and the brief to the automated compliance check and approvals and the real-time budget shifting in media, the traditional organizational silos become functionally obsolete.
Let's get specific. Which silos are breaking down? We're talking about the historical separation of creative, media, and production departments, right?
And strategy and data science. In the old agency model, those were distinct, self-contained departments with strict handoff points and sometimes even competing incentives. The strategist wrote the brief and threw it over the wall to creative, who then threw the assets over the wall to production, who then threw the files over the wall to media. Each handoff introduced friction, lag time, and data corruption.
And if AI is now the common thread managing the continuity and optimization between those stages, ensuring the strategy feeds directly into the production specifications, which feeds directly into the compliance check, the walls between those teams just serve no purpose anymore.
Absolutely. The organization needs to mirror the seamlessness of the technology. The agency must move toward highly integrated, cross-functional pods. The data scientist isn't just feeding data to the strategist, they are co-located, working with the creative director and the media buyer, all managing the same central AI system. The old job titles matter less than the overall outcome, which is optimized output flowing through that AI spine.
The implication for you, the listener here, is that implementing AI is not plug and play. It forces an existential interrogation of the existing hierarchy and departmental organization. You can't just layer AI on top of existing broken structures and expect to gain the promised speed.
It demands a complete organizational redesign. This shift replaces the vertical hierarchy, where the head of creative reports to the CEO, with horizontal collaboration, where a cross-functional pod reports on campaign performance. The new structure has to facilitate the rapid flow of data and prompt instructions to the AI, rather than managing the slow flow of files between isolated human departments. This shift is profound, forcing leadership to reconsider who reports to whom and how budget is allocated across formerly separate silos.
And this structural change mandates an adaptation within the teams themselves. You mentioned that teams must adapt to new ways of working, which includes redefining roles and processes.
We must move past the fear that AI eliminates human workers and focus instead on the reality that it profoundly redefines what work is. The skills required change drastically. If AI is handling asset resizing, drafting copy variations, and performing basic data categorization, the human creative is no longer paid for high-volume execution or rote diligence.
So what does this all mean for the people doing the work? How are roles redefined in practice? For instance, what happens to the copywriter?
Their focus shifts dramatically from execution to strategic oversight, validation, and prompt engineering. Take the copywriter. Their value is no longer in keyboard time. Their value is in their strategic and linguistic judgment. Their new core competency is prompt engineering, the art of communicating clear, nuanced, and structurally sound instructions to the AI to achieve the desired creative output while respecting complex parameters.
Let's expand on prompt engineering in this context. It's
Well,
more than just telling ChatGPT, write me an ad. What constitutes a perfect prompt in a marketing context?
a perfect prompt is a multi-layered strategic document disguised as a command. It incorporates tone of voice parameters. For example, the emotional resonance must be ironic but aspirational.
Okay.
It includes brand safety constraints like exclude any visual references to alcohol or competitive brands. It has specific audience segmentation data, targeting 25-35-year-olds in Tier 1 cities with high disposable income who previously engaged with luxury car ads. And finally, required output formatting. Generate 50 variations of a 15-second script optimized for vertical viewing with a clear call to action on the second-to-last frame.
So the human is providing the strategic intent and the judgment, and the AI is providing the volume and the execution speed.
Exactly. The human becomes the editor-in-chief, the final validator of quality and ethical adherence, and the master prompter who knows precisely how to negotiate with the machine to maximize its potential. They are moving from task execution to strategic maximization. They are selling strategic judgment and curation, not keyboard hours.
It's a much higher value role.
A much higher value role, but it requires critical thinking, a comfort with technology, and a willingness to manage algorithmic output.
But I need to challenge this optimism a bit. While the senior roles may transition to strategic oversight, doesn't this shift dramatically reduce the entry-level opportunities? If the AI handles all the repetitive tasks, who gets the experience needed to eventually become that master prompter? Are agencies cutting off the bottom of the talent pipeline?
That is the crucial, complex organizational question that agencies are grappling with right now. And you're right to point it out. Yes, the traditional entry-level job, the junior designer doing resizing, the junior analyst tagging data that is being eroded. The skill floor has been raised significantly. Agencies must now redefine entry-level roles as something like prompt apprentices or AI curation specialists. These roles require technological fluency immediately, meaning entry-level employees are no longer being hired to learn the rote tasks, but to learn how to manage the AI.
That's a huge shift in what you look for in a new hire.
It is. And it's a necessary, painful, and ongoing conversation about how to structure career paths in an AI-dominated environment.
And that leads us to what the sources identify as the deepest hurdle of all: embedding a new mindset. This isn't just about plugging in a new tool or shifting around some desks.
The sources explicitly say this requires embedding a new mindset across the organization. This is the cultural dimension, and it is usually the most resilient barrier. You can purchase the fastest AI pipeline and redesign all your reporting structures, but if senior leadership or the core creative teams still fundamentally distrust the output, or they rely on manual processes out of habit, the full potential of the tools will never, ever be leveraged.
It's the difference between adopting a technology and fundamentally trusting that technology to perform core business functions.
It is a massive leap of faith that requires cultural buy-in and a willingness to evolve from the C-suite all the way down. For decades, agency culture has centered on the genius of the individual human creative, the lone wolf.
The art.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, that culture must transition to celebrating the efficiency and scale of the human-AI partnership. If the mindset remains focused on the traditional manual process, if a creative director believes a human must touch every single pixel of an ad for it to be authentic, then the speed and scale provided by the AI are immediately negated by internal psychological barriers. The old way of working becomes a psychological anchor, dragging down the new capabilities.
So, to summarize this challenge, the transformation journey requires both the comprehensive technological adoption of these integral AI tools and the sweeping cultural change to restructure, redefine roles, and fundamentally accept the machine as a collaborative partner that drives the majority of the execution. That dual requirement is the ultimate barrier and opportunity facing marketing agencies today.
It is. If they master both the technological and the cultural shift, they gain the efficiency, scale, and capacity promised, ensuring they remain profitable in this age of value compression. If they only focus on the technology, they just end up with an expensive, underutilized new department struggling against organizational inertia.
This has been an incredibly detailed deep dive into the operational reality of AI in marketing. It's clear this is a mandatory total transformation. Let's just briefly recap the dual requirement for success.
On the technological front, AI is integral because it offers unprecedented speed, safety, and efficiency across all workflow stages. It starts with the data-driven precision of creative briefs.
Right at the beginning.
It accelerates through the scalable iteration of production pipelines, ensures safety via automated compliance checks, and achieves maximum ROI through instantaneous, real-time media optimization. It handles the volume and the data processing that humans simply cannot.
But crucially, this superhuman efficiency is unlocked only through profound internal evolution. That means aggressively restructuring to dissolve the traditional departmental silos, actively redefining human roles to focus talent on strategic oversight and specialized prompt engineering, and most difficult of all, adopting a new organizational mindset that fully trusts and accepts the machine as a foundational collaborative partner.
Without that aggressive internal evolution and cultural shift, the agency simply cannot pivot to the high-capacity, performance-based model needed to serve more clients efficiently and profitably in the current market. It just won't work.
And finally, we leave you with a final provocation, something for you, the learner, to explore as you process this shift. We noted that giants like WPP, representing the legacy establishment, and Stability AI, representing the generative future, are leading this charge. They're co-signing the necessity of this transformation.
So, given this aggressive integration of AI across every stage, especially in those most strategic and tactile areas like creative briefs and production pipelines, what does this imply for the future definition of creative work itself in advertising? If AI handles the heavy lifting of ideation based on data and the grunt work of execution, does the true measure of human creativity shift entirely from the physical act of making the content to simply directing the machine and setting the ethical and strategic intention behind its vast, scalable output? Will the most valuable creative asset in the future be the person with the best artistic vision or the person who can write the most effective, nuanced prompt?
Food for thought indeed. The director of the machine rather than the artisan. That's a huge shift. That's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.